Welcome to the Season 2 of The Insider. Welcome back. This is the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of European research and innovation, where policy meets practice and institutions navigate complexity and the systems of power shaping science, technology and society are unpacked. I'm your host, Ricardo Migueis, and I am thrilled to open this new season with a particularly timely and strategic conversation. Season 2 of The Insider is set against the backdrop of a rapidly changing world. I mean geopolitically, economically and socially. The European research and innovation landscape at the same time is evolving in response to these deep structural shifts that go from climate and security imperatives to the industrial transition to digital sovereignty and changing societal expectations about the role of science. And at the same time, we are witnessing a very fundamental reconfiguration of how the European Union organizes, funds and governs research and innovation. The Road to Framework Programme 10, FP10, and the ongoing discussions around a proposed European Competitiveness Fund, the ECF, are not just institutional processes that are ongoing. They are really what is signaling this broader transformation in the logic of integration that is materializing this broader transformation and its impact and competitiveness. So in this season, we want to ask difficult but very necessary questions. How are research and innovation institutions, public and private, expected to reposition themselves within this shifting architecture? What does strategic alignment mean when the center of gravity in the EU R&I policy is moving? And how can we read these signals now? From the mission evolution to partnership restructuring to anticipate what comes next. And this brings us to today's episode. What you're about to hear is a recording of an internal INESC Brussels HUB webinar, which we are now sharing publicly because of how valuable and timely it is. I was joined by Carla Matias dos Santos, Research and Space Counsellor at the Permanent Representation of Portugal to the European Union, and from her unique vantage point within the Council policy ecosystem, Carla has been deeply involved in the ongoing political dialogue shaping Europe's strategic research and innovation agenda, and she brings an exceptionally clear and grounded view of the interlinkages between the Horizon Europe's current strategic plan, the institutional logic, the future plans for FP10 and the proposed DCF, and what is emerging in all of this. So together, me and Carla, and especially Carla's presentation that we are making available here, and will respond to questions like how will the European Competitiveness Fund reshape coordination and funding logic in the EU research and innovation? And what does all this already tell us about Europe's evolving priorities? And most critically, for us, how should institutions and researchers within those institutions think about their own positioning in light of this FP10 ECF continuum? So at INESC Brussels HUB, this conversation is very central to our ongoing work, from scenario building to institutional strategy support that we do. So as we help our member institutes anticipate and navigate what's coming next. So whether you're a policymaker, a research leader, or part of a European research and innovation platform trying to make sense of this inflection point that we are living, this episode is for you. So let's dive in.
So, hello everyone. Carla, I think, are you okay now? Everything is going well?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, cool. Excellent. So, let's start our meeting. Carla, first of all, thank you so much for your presence in this meeting today. It is a huge pleasure and honor to be able to count on you. And also, this is a very, very important session, and you are the best person to talk to about this issue. And I am sure people will love to hear about your presentation. So what I would like to start by saying is that this is a session where we're going to unpack what is going on with the negotiations towards the next framework program, the so-called FP10. It's going to be called Horizon Europe. It's the successor of the current Horizon Europe. And also the European Competitiveness Fund and the interplay between the two, and how all of that also relates to the multi-annual financial framework. So this is a very complex set of programs and instruments and policies. And what we will do is then talk about the strategic implications for INESC. I will go through the flow of the session in more detail, but this is a moment where organizations that position themselves strategically will lead the capacity for participation in European projects in the next decade. It is as simple as that. So I really would like to, again, welcome my friend and esteemed colleague for many years, Carla Santos. Carla is the Science Counsellor at the Perm-Rep, so the Permanent Representation of Portugal towards the European Union. And she is the most experienced person in that role in the history of the role. So it is really an honor to be able to count on her. And she also has been truly supportive across the years of our mission, of our positioning. And today we're going to start by I'm going to make a very, very quick introductory round, and then we're going to jump straight into Carla's presentation. I'm going to explain to you in this introductory round what are we doing at the hub very quickly in terms of how do we want to position to help INESC position strategically. And we're going to use Mentimeter in this session. At the beginning, just with a very quick warm-up question, and then after Carla's presentation, with a tool called the FP10 Readiness Tool, just an introduction to one of the tools that the Hub has developed to support INESC centers and the institutes themselves to position and to analyze and to self-assess how ready they are for FP10 and then there are a set of tools I'm going to quickly talk to you about. Now, very quickly, this is a new landscape and it's a shared architecture between Horizon Europe and the European Competitiveness Fund. It has a lot of strategic implications. I don't want to preempt Carla's presentation at all. I'm just going to mention some of the things that the Commission wants to say, the message of the Commission, which is probably does not correspond exactly to the reality at the moment, and Carla will go deeper into those details. But what the Commission wants really is to have some big policy windows, and then have a common rule book between the programs and between these major components of our funding structure for the 7 years from 2028 to 2034. And they want what they call a seamless investment journey that goes from knowledge production to the deployment, right? Passing from research, manufacturing, or development and deployment of the solutions. So they also talk a lot about not projects, but policy-driven ecosystems. They talk a lot about that. They talk a lot of directionality. It's something that we have spoken in a previous winter meeting in a lot of detail. And so institutions that align early will shape these goals. And this is what we are here to do. And we have been and are excellent at execution, but we need to strengthen our strategic positioning. So we need to abandon the reactive project execution. We have started doing that. We have managed to do that in certain parts. It's not all bad. And the tomorrow we need to build together needs to be related to this strategic positioning at the European level, in a proactive, in an influencing, in setting the future agenda. And this is possible, and we are already doing it in some areas. But there is a lot of potential to be better and to increase manifold the capacity of participation in European projects across the INESC institutes. And we are fragmented. We are still very fragmented. We have a lot of fragmented narratives within centers, within institutes, and across centers and across institutes. And you all know that. And this means missed opportunities also for us. So there is homework. It's not only about what the others do. It's also about what we do internally. And we at the Hub have a framework called the Sensing and Seizing. And basically, we want to help you detect the signals, align your strategy, and anticipate opportunities. And to do that, obviously, you need to have a strategy. So you need to build the capacity and to have that view, that perspective, that strategy to shape and influence the agenda. So sensing is about awareness, and seizing is about alignment and capturing the capacity to implement those opportunities in your center, in your team, in your institute. We have a toolbox that I'm not going to talk a lot about. These are only some of the main elements of that toolbox. This toolbox can be implemented as a fully in a specific team, in a specific center to help that positioning, to create that positioning, and or can be just a tool that you grab as you go to a toolbox, and you grab a tool, and when you need a specific nudge in a specific direction. We are working bilaterally with the centers that want to work with us, and some of them that we have already approached. So we are always open to hear from you now and in the future. And the FP10 readiness tool that we're going to very likely use a version in Mentimeter today is really about this strategic alignment to assess what is our partnership capital. So how well are we in the alignment with the priorities, in the partnerships that we need, in the influence and visibility, and in the operational implementation capacity. And this is also a step towards our winter meeting 2026, where we would like already to be much more mature in this conversation.
A very quick introduction. Well, when we were discussing, me and Ricardo, what I could do as a presentation, I was saying that I don't like to do very long presentations. I like very, very short slides. And then when I started and then Ricardo was saying, well, but you need to give the information that will help everybody to understand what the program entails, the two programs actually. And then when I started to gather the information and the number of slides started to piling up, I thought, no, Ricardo was right. Indeed, there's need to explain a little bit what is in the minds of the Commission and in the minds of the two regulations that are really interlinked, which is the FP10 called Horizon Europe again, and the European Competitiveness Fund. And that's what I will try to do in the presentation. The slides are not mine. It's a collection of different slides from different Commission presentations where I picked those that I thought would give a better view of what the two proposals entail and what is in the minds of the Commission with this kind of I wouldn't say revolution, but is in a way a revolution, especially when it comes to the changes. And thank you very much, Natalia, for sharing. And we could already move to the first one, or otherwise you could go just scroll down and we will move slide by slide. The first, just continuing a bit the introduction, when the Commission presented the two proposals, it was on the 17th of July, and the ministers of research were all gathered in an informal council in Copenhagen. And the speculation had been so huge when it comes to if we would be having or not an autonomous program, Horizon Europe, that when the ministers saw the proposal, they were quite positively surprised. But then we start going into the nitty-gritty, and indeed there are a lot of details that change. And that's what I will try to present. Natalia, if you could probably scroll down and go to the first slide. The first one, that is the structure of the proposal for Horizon Europe. Exactly that one. I don't know if you can see clearly that the Commission maintains the structure, or more or less the structure of Horizon Europe, but what really changes, and probably this is not clear to everyone, on Pillar 1, Excellent Science, you can see that the European Research Council and the MSCA are still there, and then you have this new Science for Policies, and this is the activities by the Joint Research Centre. When you come to Pillar 2, Competitiveness and Society, is where you see the biggest changes. You have two different blocks. Let's say you have the competitiveness one, and this is tightly linked with the European Competitiveness Fund and the policy windows of the Competitiveness Fund. And then you have the society, and the society is everything else. And everything else means these societal challenges, the emissions, and the new European Bauhaus, that nobody thought that would become a new instrument, but indeed, in the Commission proposal, it became a new instrument. Then when we go to Pillar 3, you have the EIC, as we know today, you have the innovation ecosystems, as you have today, and you have the knowledge triangle. And the proposal does mention the EIT. We know that the Commission will give continuity to funding the knowledge and innovation communities, the KICs from the EIT, but the EIT is not mentioned in the proposal, just a knowledge triangle. And what the Commission says is that they will revise the regulation of the EIT by the end of 2026, and then to be seen if there will be big changes there or not. And then when you come to Pillar 4, which now in the current program was a cross-cutting area, now it became a pillar. You have the European Research Area, you have the research infrastructures that nowadays were in Pillar 1, and now they are set in Pillar 4, and you have a novelty, which is the technology infrastructures. And then you have the widening as we have today, although there as well we will be having a few changes. Then I have a few slides, and you could move to the next one, Natalie, if you may. Just to show you what we know nowadays regarding the budget, which is not much. We know that for Pillar 1, there will be 44 billion proposal from the Commission. We don't know if this will be agreed by the co-legislators. And for the ERC, we have 31.5. We don't know exactly what is the amount for the MSCA and for the science and policies. And then if we go to the next one, which is the Pillar 2, if you could move to the next one, it's the competitiveness and society. Exactly. You know that it is in the proposal that it's 75.9 billion. So it's a big part of the program. And then you have the funding for the different policy windows. What does this mean? It means that the money that is enshrined in the Horizon Europe regulation, the proposal, is a top-up to the amounts that are foreseen in the policy windows in the ECF. So you will be having a contribution from Horizon Europe in terms of collaborative research and innovation to the ECF policy windows. And then you have a very small amount, 7.6, for the part on society. And then if you move to the next one on innovation, we know that the overall pillar on innovation has 38.8 billion. We know that the EIC will receive the biggest part of the budget, but we don't know what exactly will be going to the different strands in Pillar 3. Finally, on Pillar 4, the European Research Area, the next slide, we know that the overall amount is 16.3 billion, and we know from there 5.4 is to widening. We don't know exactly what then will be for research and technology infrastructures. And then the next slide is to show you what are the novelties according to the Commission proposal. The next one, please. According to the Commission proposal, what are the novelties in the program? And the Commission says that the big novelties are further simplification, the partnership landscape that the Commission also intends to simplify, the EIC, especially the part on defense, the research and technology infrastructures, changes in widening as well, and changes in dual-use research in the sense that for the first time in the history of the framework program, dual-use will be a cross-cutting by default area in the program. Then we come to the next slide. It is just to explain to you a little bit what is in the mind of the Commission regarding the simplification for applicants. What the Commission says is that the current proposal will streamline the reporting obligations, so less reporting obligations for beneficiaries, faster procedures. For example, they propose that the time to grant should be 7 months with a few exceptions. The use of lump sum grants by default, this is not yet consensual because the universities and research centers and institutes that have experience and accountability and having total cost think that probably they will lose money with this. But anyway, the Commission says this will be a big simplification. They also think that they would implement less prescriptive programming, streamlining the types of actions. For example, in the proposal, you will no longer see the differences between research and innovation actions and innovation actions and others. It will be, let's say, a simplified toolbox of instruments. Regarding consortium approach, according to the Commission, this is maintained. The next slide is about what the Commission told us that would be, and the proposal entails as would be simplification regarding the partnerships. The proposal says that there will be only two types of partnerships, the ones based on the work program and those based on the treaty. When they say the treaty, this means the joint undertakings, which are based on the Article 187 from the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, and the 185s, like PRIMA, for example, like EDCTP, like Eurostar, so public-public partnerships. And then the work program-based. According to the Commission, we will no longer have the co-programmed, co-fund partnerships. We'll be having work program-based partnerships, and this means there will be a memorandum of understanding between the consortia and the Commission, which may also involve member states and having a co-fund dimension, but this is the way that the Commission considers would simplify the partnership instrument. And then they consider also that they would streamline the number of partnerships, although in the proposal there is no cap, no limit regarding the number, but it's what the Commission conveys, the intention of having a more coherent portfolio and a more limited number of partnerships. They also say, and this is in the regulation, that the partnerships, although being an instrument enshrined in Horizon Europe, in FP10 again, it could also be funded by the ECF in the areas that are strategic and included in the policy windows. And then we move to the next slide that refers to the measures to in regards to the European Innovation Council that can become or are for the Commission novelty. The first one is introducing strongly a more ARPA model, like in the US, supporting high-risk projects assessed by program managers. The Commission already piloted a little bit this idea and has already included in the evaluation and the follow-up of the projects the program managers, but this should be reinforced in FP10. And then this is also a novelty, introducing a DARPA approach, meaning a defense approach alongside the dual use. What does this mean? That following what is already being discussed to open up the EIC to defense, and this is a discussion that is already ongoing to open up the current EIC for defense projects. The idea is to continue that on FP10, besides the fact that dual use will be across the board. Now, regarding the next one, which is research and technology infrastructures, the novelty is that research and technology infrastructures now are part of Horizon Europe, FP10, which is not what is happening today. Another novelty is the fact that according to the regulation, the framework program can also finance the construction of infrastructures up to 20%. And there is an article in the proposed regulation that states that for research and technology infrastructures of strategic interest, the Commission can fund up to 20% of construction costs. The question is how the criteria to define which is a strategic research and technology infrastructures, which criteria are those and how this will be selected. I can already tell you that there are a few member states that think that research infrastructures is a concept that has already been defined. It has a roadmap or several roadmaps that have been issued for many years. The same does not apply to research infrastructures. And for some delegations or some member states, technology infrastructures should be more financed by the ECF and not by Horizon Europe. But this is a discussion that will continue. And then moving to the next slide, which is regarding the widening. What are the novelties? According to the Commission, the widening measures to increase the participation of the less performing countries in the framework program has been in place since Horizon 2020. So, according to the Commission, it is time to create an exit strategy for the countries that have a better performance in widening. And so, they, in the proposal, created a classification of the widening countries and the countries that indeed would be ready to leave slowly the widening measures, which are called the transition countries, and Portugal is part of the transition countries. What does this mean? That according to the proposal, the transition countries would not have access to capacity building measures, for example, the teaming or the ERA chairs, where Portugal actually is very successful, but only to the other, more of networking and knowledge valorization measures. This is obviously a big point for discussion, and obviously may evolve in the negotiations, but this is the baseline of the proposal. And now I come to the following slide, which I touched upon already, which is another big novelty regarding FP10, is the dual-use research. And not only FP10, also regarding the European Competitiveness Fund. According to the two regulations, dual use will be applied across the board. So the programs will no longer be civil by nature. They can also support dual-use technologies. And in addition to that, there will be a specific program for research and innovation on defense, which is nowadays the European Defense Fund. But the European Defense Fund will become a specific program inside European Competitiveness Fund to support defense research and innovation. And as I was mentioning before, in addition to that, besides the funding of R&I on defense in the Competitiveness Fund, we'll be having defense on the EIC accelerator. So this is in a nutshell what are the novelties and what's in the proposal for FP10. Now, the following slides are about the European Competitiveness Fund, ECF. And why did the Commission presented a European Competitiveness Fund? According to the Commission, and this derives a bit from the reports that probably some of you have heard, the Latter report, the Draghi report, or the Aitor report, those different reports mentioned the complexity and fragmented funding landscape. They also mentioned the lack of funding continuity from fundamental research, innovation, deployment, manufacturing, procurement, and so the need of having a way to follow the investment journey. And because of that, and also the fragmented instruments for venture capital, access to funding, the high complexity for beneficiaries in applying to different programs, the Commission decided to create this European Competitiveness Fund that includes 14 programs that exist today. It includes, for example, the Digital Europe program, the LIFE program, the InvestEU, the European Space Program, the defense, the EDF on defense that I already mentioned, and so on and so forth, the Connecting Europe facility on digital. So it includes all these programs in a single chapeau, in a single framework, in order to indeed guarantee, on the one hand, a more consolidated vision on how this investment journey can be followed up, to facilitate a one-stop shop for especially companies and startups and scale-ups, but also the other participants to have access to the different funding opportunities, and also more flexibility and a single rulebook of instruments, which they call toolbox. And so this is the idea behind the Competitiveness Fund. Most member states understand and buy the idea of investment journey and the idea behind the European Competitiveness Fund, but many have doubts if indeed this whole architecture will bring simplification to be seen. Then we come to the following slide, is just to show you the budget that is proposed for the ECF to 234.3 billion. You can see also the budget for the policy windows, but then I will have a slide further down on this. We can already move to the next one. That is just to show you how the regulation on the ECF is composed. You have a big chapter on general provisions, which detail the objectives. And if you look, for example, to the article on the objectives, it has an enormous number of indents because it has to state the objectives of all the programs that are included in the ECF. Just to give you an example, since it includes the European Space Programme, and this means it includes sub-programs on Galileo, Copernicus, on access to space, and so on and so forth. It has to have objectives on all of this. The budget, obviously, and the single rule book of rules for participation, and the toolbox of instruments. Then you have a chapter that is mostly dedicated to SMEs and advisory systems and the collaboration regarding SMEs. And then a couple of chapters that detail the provisions regarding the policy windows. And if you look to each policy window, you will have the description from the R&I perspective towards the deployment, towards the procurement, manufacturing, and so on. So it's really an extensive a way of describing what each policy window entails in terms of programming and possible instruments. And the final chapter on the final provisions. Then on the following slide, you can see a visual on the 4 policy windows: the clean transition and industrial decarbonization, health, biotech, agricultural and bioeconomy, digital leadership, resilience and security, defense, industry, and space. You see here as well what comes from Horizon Europe, or FP10, and what comes or is enshrined in the ECF regulation, which is a cumulative funding. This means that everything that is collaborative research and innovation related to competitiveness will be included in this policy windows. All the rest is the normal Horizon Europe programming, but everything related to R&I collaborative research in the 4 areas and the policy windows will be dealt with in the ECF. The following slide is another way of showing the interlinkages. So you see the structure of the FP10, and then how the competitiveness part of Pillar 2 is directly linked to the 4 windows of the ECF, and then the also linkages with the Invest EU. And now I come to the linkages in more detail. I have just, I think, four slides just to show a bit the linkages. Now on the next one, you see the 2 strands. You have the Horizon Europe regulation, and you have also the specific program, which is a decision which it's much simpler than we have today. Usually the specific program detailed the content of the different areas and how they would be implemented in the framework program, and now it's a much simpler document. And then you have on the other side the ECF and the specific program on research and innovation on defense, which nowadays, probably most of you do not realize, but nowadays is a specific program under the current Horizon Europe, but for the future MFF, it's under the ECF. The following slide tries to show you a little bit of the governance and the strategic planning. It's a bit complex, as you can see, but what is proposed by the Commission in the ECF is that you have a strategic stakeholder board, and the strategic stakeholder board will be, let's say, a strategic planning advisory board of the Commission to define the priorities that should be then translated into work programs. So the strategic board will advise the Commission in terms of which areas are relevant to be part of the different work programs under the policy windows. And you may say, but are the areas that are described in the policy windows closed? How will the key emerging technologies or emerging areas on research and innovation be feeding in this process? The Commission in the regulation, the proposed regulation for the ECF, also creates an observatory on emerging technologies that would also feed this strategic planning process, let's say, in terms of which areas should be included in the different policy windows planning of activities. Then each policy window will also have thematic platforms. And the thematic platforms are a way, according to the Commission, to consult the stakeholders, so that stakeholders could also contribute with their ideas to all this overall planning. Then there are a couple of advisory boards according to the different windows. There is one for defense, there is one for space, and there is one for the InvestEU. But then there are some differences according to the policy windows. And apart from all of this, there is the comitology. What is the comitology? Is the program committees where member states have a say and can or not approve the work programs. On the side of Horizon Europe is more or less what we have of FP10. Future Horizon Europe is more or less what we have in the current Horizon Europe. So you have the ERC Scientific Council for the strategic planning regarding the ERC work program. For the EIC board, but then for the other areas is just Horizon Europe comitology, meaning the different program committees. A difference that probably is more important to member states than to stakeholders is that in the regulation for the Competitiveness Fund, the Commission proposes that member states are consulted in the program committees, whilst in Horizon Europe, the member states can decide, have a say, and block Commission decisions. But here, it's a question of, in the negotiations, the member states having a bigger say and trying to change the regulation. Now, the next slide enters a bit and interlinkages. You saw that this architecture is a bit complex. What are the interlinkages or the tight connection that all this process entails regarding ECF and Horizon Europe? First, the strategic planning, the priority setting, meaning that for collaborative research related to competitiveness under the 4 policy windows, the priority setting is under the ECF, so the governance structure that I was speaking regarding the previous slide. The single rule book of rules, although there are a few exceptions in the Horizon Europe regulation, but most of the rules are basically those under the ECF. A single work program, so each policy window will be having a work program, and the work program would say which are the collaborative research areas, R&I areas, under that policy window. Under the same work program, what are the measures for example, deployment, test beds, access to markets, meaning the investment journey. So each work program will try to, under each policy window, entail the different areas from the collaborative research and innovation towards the market. How this will work in practice, we all have a lot of doubts, but this is what is in the making. And then the evaluation of the performance of the program would also be done under the ECF. Again, this is in what comes to the 4 policy windows. For the remaining parts of Horizon Europe, it's the implementation under the Horizon Europe as we know today. Then the following slide, it's about the rule book on rules for participation. And here there are the single rule book states what are the rules for participation that are enshrined in the ECF and that apply to Horizon Europe. To give you an example, the alternative and combined funding. This is something that applies to the ECF, but is also applying to Horizon Europe. And so on and so forth. Probably not relevant to mention this, but an interesting rule that is in the ECF is the accelerated procedure to adopt calls for proposals or work programs if there are issues in terms of competitiveness that entail this a rapid procedure, and this is enshrined in the ECF, but applies actually to Horizon Europe across the board. So the single rule book applies to Horizon Europe across the board, not only to Pillar 2. Another point that could be interesting, probably to some of you, you know what exists today as the Seal of Excellence, meaning the projects that are well evaluated under the framework program that don't get funding, the Commission may attribute a Seal of Excellence, and this can, or not, but can facilitate the funding via national programs, including structural funds. According to the proposal from the Commission, we will no longer have the Seal of Excellence. We'll be having a competitiveness seal that would apply to the ECF and Horizon Europe. These are just a few details. Then we can come to the next slide, and I have only 2 more, and then I will be open to questions. This is just another visual to show you how the rules of participation apply. So you have The corporate rules of the Commission, which are enshrined in financial regulation, like the usual way of opening calls for proposals, types of participants, of funding rules, synergies, etc., then those under the ECF. Then Horizon Europe has a few exceptions of deviations from the ECF when it comes, for example, to the ERC on MSCA, but those are really just details. And the final slide, and I would stop here, just to show you in different words, which is, or in a nutshell, which is this tight connection. Again, the single rule book approach, the common rules, on alternative combined cumulative funding. I did mention in the other slide the EU preference, but this is a new article under the ECF that states that when there are strategic areas that are relevant and important to the security of Europe, obviously there should be EU preference. This may have an impact, for example, in collaboration with third countries and associated countries. Continuing, and just to finish, the common scope, the ECF policy windows, and the strategic focus that applies to collaborative research as well. A single work program. The Commission says that under each policy window, nothing prevents that they need more than one work program, but in any case, the idea is to have this integrated way of following the investment journey, the common governance, meaning that to decide the work program under the policy windows is the program committees under the policy windows. And then the common and coordination toolbox on instruments, on management of the program, and so on. And I would stop here and be ready to reply to questions, because I imagine there will be many of them. There are many for member states as well, I can tell you. I would stop here the presentation, but since there are 2 points that I didn't address, I would do that orally, which is the key political and institutional drivers behind the proposals, and what are changes to research are entailed to research organizations and member states. I would just in 1 minute touch upon those 2 points very quickly. In terms of key drivers, there are a big change in terms of mindset in the EU, and the key drivers are clearly competitiveness, prosperity, security, and defense. There's no way to circumvent that. And the next multi-annual financial framework, MFF, will be indeed having these priorities. When the Commission presented the proposal for the MFF, it created 3 blocks. The first block is the national envelopes. And in the national envelopes, you have the cohesion, you have the agricultural policy. And the Commission was very smart on proposing this, because this is one envelope, no longer separated. So it's up to the member state to decide from this envelope what goes to cohesion, what goes to agriculture, for example. Then you have the second pillar, which is competitiveness. And this is driven by competitiveness, by excellence, by the need for Europe to guarantee prosperity. And this also entails the consequence, and you can already see in the description of the policy windows of the ECF, on directionality to strategic areas. And this is very much related to what Ricardo was saying in the beginning of the strategic alignment. This will be required more and more, because we no longer will see a proliferation of small areas of intervention. You will have big tickets. For example, the AI gigafactories or semiconductors, just to name a few. Another point that is a big change is flexibility versus predictability. According to the Commission, this budget, the proposal for the budget, will have a much bigger flexibility, meaning that the budget that is proposed for Horizon Europe, be it the one that will be managed in the Horizon Europe governance or the one managed under the policy windows, is a dedicated budget. It's not earmarked. So if there will be huge priorities or a war or a new COVID outbreak, you name it, the flexibility will allow the Commission to transfer R&I budget to other areas. Then to finalize, this indeed will bring a lot of changes to how the research institutions can adapt, because it's a different context, much more strategic. It requires a lot of more preparation and a lot of more forward-looking and network building, alignment with EU priorities. And a much more difficult way of coping with all the ways how the priorities are set. So this is what I wanted to say. I would pass to Ricardo. I'm sure there will be a lot of questions, but then it's up to you, Ricardo, to manage the rest of the session. And thank you very much for listening to me. I know I took a bit of time, but it's quite complex and I thought it was useful.
It was very, very useful for all of us. Thank you so much. And I have a million questions, but I will control myself and give the floor to our colleagues that might have other questions. There are also questions in the chats. I will let my colleague Corina start with the questions in the chat, but I also would like to highlight that if you want to intervene orally, you can request so through the small window at the bottom left that mentions request live calling. At least that's what our colleagues wrote in the chat. If you want to request the intervention, just like it's the hand raising of this platform. So, Corina, do you want to highlight the question in the chat?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? I hope yes. Thank you a lot, Carla and Ricardo, for this insightful discussion. It was really enlightening. I have for the moment, and please do not hesitate to raise more questions, to leave your comments in the chat. For the moment, only Luis is asking, is there an indication on the continuation of joint undertakings? I don't have any other question, but please do not hesitate to...
I can already reply to that.
Yes.
And then I forgot to respond about the timeline, which was something that I was supposed also to state, but then I can refer to that in the end. Regarding joint undertakings, when I was showing the slide on the partnerships landscape, are the treaty-driven partnerships, meaning that they are based on the treaty, so they will continue. The question is if all of them will continue or not. And the joint undertakings usually are adopted through legal acts, so not the regulation on Horizon Europe. So the Commission has to propose a legal act that then will be negotiated as the framework program is negotiated between Council and Parliament. And according to the Commission, this legal act should be presented somewhere next year when we'll be more advanced in the negotiations of Horizon Europe. So indeed, joint undertakings will continue. I would anticipate that joint undertakings like the Euro HPC or the CHIPS JU or those on the SIP JUs, I was saying semiconductors, on the ones on biotech and those that are linked with the policy windows, for sure, they will continue. The others to be seen, but the Commission is indeed reflecting on that. And on the timeline, because I forgot to mention it, for those who don't know, the Commission presented the proposal. Now is under discussion in Council, be it the regulation on the ECF or the one on Horizon Europe. At the same time, since this is a file that is co-decided with the Parliament is also analyzing the proposal. There is no decision expected this year. Only what currently the presidency of the Council of the EU is Denmark. The intention of the presidency is to advance as much as possible, but have a progress report stating which are the areas that are more consensual and those that still require a lot of negotiations. Then, beginning of 2026, it will be the Cypriot presidency that will continue the discussion. We hope that somewhere mid next year, we'll be having a consolidated view on the two regulations. The Parliament is also following the same route, and probably they will be having a report somewhere mid next year. But all of this subject to confirmation. But indeed, that's what is planned by the two presidencies. But Denmark is trying to advance very, very, very quickly because they want to not close because they cannot close it, but at least reduce the critical aspects to the minimum so that then the next presidency can concentrate on those. And then, obviously, it will be the next presidencies that will discuss the JUs and all the legal acts and partnerships that will derive from the regulation on the FP10.
Okay, thank you. I see more now coming. From the financial point of view, are there any changes regarding funding rates? As I could understand, at least all funding rates will be the same.
According to the proposal by the Commission, yes, the funding rates will be the same, although they are up to. So we never know if the work programs in the future will reduce a little bit the funding rates, but yes, no changes on that, and no changes on the typology of instruments that we know so far. There may be some changes when it comes to the work programs, since I'm thinking about the policy windows, for example. So on R&I, probably the funding rates will be the same, but whilst we are approaching, let's say, higher TRLs in the market, maybe the funding rates will change. But in any case, when it comes to FP10, it's what we know today.
When you mention security, does this include issues related to strategic autonomy, industrial dependencies of materials, intermediary inputs, or geography of value chains?
Yes, indeed. And those areas are mentioned, especially in the European Competitiveness Fund proposal, as a general objective. So one of the drivers of the Competitiveness Fund is precisely the strategic autonomy of the EU. That's why there is this reference I was mentioning you on the European preference. If you look, for example, to the description of the policy window 4, which is on resilience, security, defense, industry, and space, when it comes to resilience, for example, the focus or the center of gravity of resilience is precisely raw materials, value chains, and how the Europe can secure the strategic autonomy in those areas. So indeed, these are huge priorities for the next MFF.
And one last one, research and innovation actions merges with innovation actions. Will coordination and support actions remain?
Yes, they will remain. This is also already enshrined in the regulation. They will remain. The fact that they are merged, it means that they will be determined by TRLs, no longer called research actions or research and innovation actions. It's just a simplification of terminology. But yes, CSAs will continue.
All right, so that's a fantastic set of questions. There are a little bit more. There are more questions coming in now. So, but I'm just going to jump in quickly and make some questions myself that I think will be useful. One question that I have is related with the continuation of the budget between what is considered Horizon Europe and what is considered European Competitiveness Fund. Because I have seen slides circulating by very reputable people that kind of add up the budgets. Right, so you have. I mean, we could even go back to the presentation and check the amounts, but in the end, you have, imagine, 20 billion for the 7 years for collaborative research in the specific part of Horizon Europe. And what I have seen is that people are adding that to the European Competitiveness Fund because, as you are saying, there is this seamless investment journey. Right? So it depends on the TRL and the work programs are supposed to. So people are adding up the money and they're saying instead of 175 billion, we're actually going to end up with 500 billion. Right? So I just would like to make a quick reality check related to that.
Yes, indeed. The only budget, we are speaking about the Commission proposal for the budget. We don't know if this will be the final figures. And there will be a lot of fights in terms of the negotiations between what goes for agriculture and the national envelopes and what goes for competitiveness. So we don't know if at the end of the day, the Horizon Europe or the ECF will have this amount. This is one point. A second point, in terms of the budget for collaborative research that relates to the policy windows, is only the budget dedicated, that is set to be dedicated in Horizon Europe to the policy windows. So the remaining budget that is enshrined in the policy windows is for deployment, for procurement, for access to market, so other areas that do not pertain to R&I. This is clear. So it's cumulative, but it's clearly separated what is R&I and what is the remaining part. So it's not that R&I in the policy windows will be having more than that Horizon Europe contributes. No.
Okay, the other question that I would like to pose, and then I'll go back to the questions in the chat, is basically related with the size of the projects and the positioning that is needed. It's a double question indeed. So it's what I can see is that the projects will increase in size. For example, at least that's the indication that the direction of travel that I can see. For example, what Andre said that re-emerges with IA, so the research innovation actions with innovation actions, that already says that the project is supposed to cover the whole value chain in principle, which is huge, right? And that also says that. So that's an example, but of one of the indicators that the projects will be much bigger. And the other example, and the other indication is about the positioning, which means that to get into to coordinate will be much more difficult, and to get into these projects or to actually have some influence in and be in projects that will be aligned with what we are doing, and us being aligned with what is needed, will require a lot of anticipation and a lot of study and a lot of work, right? So what do you comment? What do you see? What do you feel? What comments have you heard in the corridors?
Yeah, there is since the beginning of the negotiations, there is a lot of questions from member states regarding exactly the need for either Horizon Europe and either the ECF, and when it comes to the policy windows, to cover the entire value chain in terms of TRS. So that even in the policy windows, the ECF does not forget to lower TRS. We're not talking about fundamental research or blue sky research. This is Pillar 1 in Horizon Europe, but even collaborative research in lower TRLs is fundamental to guarantee strategic autonomy in the different areas of the policy windows. And the Commission guarantees that this is the fact, that they will guarantee that. At the same time, they already said that it's not that the fact that thinking about the ECF will cover the entire investment journey, it doesn't mean that a project will have to cover the entire value chain in terms of from the collaborative research in a lower TRL and go to the market. The work programs will be constructed in the way that allow the investment journey, but it doesn't mean that this cannot be a portfolio of projects which individually do not cover the entire value chain. The question is, and everyone has that same question, how this will be guaranteed in practice. And if this is really a simplification to beneficiaries or an extra layer of complexity that will not help, especially smaller member states who are not so ready for these big tickets. But this is something that is not yet clear.
All right. Well, I would like to hear you on what it means for us to not have access to capacity building measures in widening, for example, and what it means to have access to 20% of funding for research and technology infrastructures, which, from my reading, does not mean that we can now count with 20% of funding for our infrastructures. So yeah. I'd just like to hear you on that.
Starting with the widening. This is the baseline proposal from the Commission. So 6 countries are considered in the transition group. And the Commission used the European Innovation Scoreboard and the gross national product to calculate. And that mixed with the participation in the program, they said, listen, you are already prepared to start phasing out. This means that in the reflection of the Commission, everything related to building of capacities in less performing member states, those that are in the transition already did the job. So the teaming, networking with bigger research institutions, the other chairs inviting a chair from a non-widening country to come. This is capacity building. And the Commission says you don't need that anymore. You did enough reforms nationally. Your scientific community and innovation community is already performing enough that you can not participate here. And then you should continue only in what comes to networking, to excellence, more driven projects. This is not obviously stabilized. The countries that were put in the transition are not happy with it. They question the indicators that are used, especially the innovation scoreboard, and the amount of time between the data they used and the beginning of the next MFF. Many things can change, and so they are not happy with that. At the same time, there is a big I wouldn't say revolution, but there is a big change between the current Horizon Europe and the future Horizon Europe. And most of the widening countries where they have better performance is in collaborative research. And there will be a lot of changes in terms of how collaborative research will be organized. So this is an argument against having this transition. It's very difficult not to have that. So, and in terms of the negotiations, we are trying to see what arguments we can use, at least to postpone the beginning of the transition, or to, for example, reduce the funding rates in the other measures called capacity buildings to those that are in transition, but still allow them to participate. But this is still a negotiation that is in the beginning. But there is an extra layer of complexity. The fact that the presidency decided that it's not the research attachés or ministers that will discuss widening, because this is a political issue. So it's the budget councillors that will discuss the widening together with the budget and all of those things.
And the parliament.
And the parliament. So it's still a long way to go, but we need to fight and to try to see what we can do to avoid that we go with the proposal as it is right now in the regulation.
A lot to say about it.
And the other question was? I forgot.
We'll talk about it in another way, but it was about the 20% for infrastructure.
The 20%. There was a very interesting discussion when the Commission presented the proposal, because in the regulation, the Commission, because for the package, for those who don't know, the package of Horizon Europe is 2 documents, a regulation and a specific program. In the regulation, it's stated up to 20% for research infrastructures. In the specific program, up to 20% for research and technology infrastructures. Everybody was confused, and we asked the Commission, that then came and clarified this is a clerical error and the 20% is for both. Obviously, people think that this is eventually for the Hadron Collider, the new collider of CERN, to contribute to that, because the regulation really states highly strategic research and technology infrastructures. What criteria will be used to define highly strategic is quite questionable. And this is a discussion actually that we're going to have at my level in the Research Working Party next week. So after that, I can give you some more details.
Well, let me know what you need.
Okay.
And Corina, do you want to move to the other questions in the
There are 2 more. I think we haven't addressed yet. One is there a connection between the CHIPS Act and the pillars you presented?
Yes, there is. Coming back to the question that was asked on the joint undertakings, the CHIPS Act, when it comes to research and innovation, the CHIPS JU is an Horizon Europe partnership. But the CHIPS Act is much broader than that. And the CHIPS Act is enshrined in the policy window on digital transformation. So yes, there is the funding. Everything related to the CHIPS Act will be coming from the ECF and from Horizon Europe.
So Luis is asking, anyone spoke about 7G mobile comms?
Not directly, but the digital transformation policy window in the ECF, it's broad enough to comprise all those areas. The policy window the text is described in a way that it has in its objectives a description which are the areas that can be R&I, which are the areas that can be deployment, but it's broad enough to encompass all those domains.
For the moment, we don't have many more questions. I think we answered them all. I'm very happy for that.
Thank you, Corina. Thank you so much.